Hello everyone, I'm Samantha Jane Smith.
And I'm Jacob Keynes, and you are listening to the Classical Queer Podcast.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of the Classical Queer Podcast. It doesn't seem that long ago, Jacob and I were talking about starting this podcast and wondering if we would have any listeners or anyone to talk to. Luckily, our wildest fears didn't come true. So thanks to everyone who's been on the programme and for their contributions, and of course to you, the listener. Now for our first anniversary, we welcome to the show musician, composer and all-around artist Sarah McCabe. Sarah hails from Canada, but is most often seen these days in London. Also known as HENDRA, Sarah's first album is due out soon. Jacob and I hope you enjoy the interview.
Well, welcome, Sarah McCabe. We are so excited to have you here today on the podcast. We're joined by the wonderful Sarah McCabe, who is right now in Ontario, but is normally London-based, and is doing a PhD at Guildhall, correct? Guildhall?
Yes.
Guildhall, and focused on, what would you... it's in your write-up. There,
Queer open mics is the kind of...
Open mics, but
Yeah.
queer-specific open mics and kind of live performance. And the neat thing that I can't wait to talk about is that it encompasses so many different genres and versions of performance, and your own practice as a performer is kind of draws from so many different areas. And I'm so thrilled we get to listen to your music and talk to you about what you do.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here to chat to you both today.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We, for people listening, we're connected through some mutual friends. As it goes with Canada and especially Nova Scotia, there were a few people we knew in common, and our mutual friend India Gailey, who's a cellist, connected us and suggested that we should talk. And so here we are. We get this opportunity to chat about music and to chat about life and chat about kind of our mutual past. And Sammy has Halifax connections as well. So Sammy is also
awesome.
Not completely disconnected from Halifax either.
Yeah.
Halifax, England, that is, I think.
Still counts. It still counts.
Yeah.
So what we like to usually do is just kind of start with a bit of a bio. And so if you could just tell us a bit about your background and how you arrived where you have arriven to and all those things. It can be as like non-academic-y, non-performance-y as you like, and it can be whatever version of history. Some people love their like academic bio. Some people like their like personal bio. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. So I'm Sarah. I also use HENDRA as a stage name. More on that later. And my pronouns are she, her, but if people use they, them, I won't mind as well. So I am from what's now called Bowmanville, Ontario, but it's situated within the traditional untreaty territory of the Mississaugas and Chippewas of the Anishinaabeg. And I lived here most of my life until 18, and then I moved to Nova Scotia. I went to Acadia University as a very serious classical violinist, and that lasted about 6 months, into which I kind of transitioned into a lot of other musical performance arty stuff, then moved to London, UK. And I guess how I would best describe myself is a creator of stuff. I write and I compose and I play and perform what I write and compose, and I perform other people's works as well. I mostly perform on viola and voice. My big thing is singing and playing viola and at the same time. So yeah, that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. Lots of different stuff over the years, but I now am mostly focused on kind of this songwriting, singing viola life.
And
We
what an
like
exciting.
we like stuff, lots of stuff.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I try not to pigeonhole myself too much. You know, I do a lot of different stuff. I'm a researcher as well, kind of accidentally. So
And if there's something we found through this podcast, it's that queer musicians, queer performers love to have their fingers in many different pies.
yeah,
It's a trait of ours to not be pigeonholed into to one very generic path. So this all checks out, I
yeah,
suppose.
One thing that came up when I was looking through some of your music and some of your performances is the great variety of it. And you know, I must admit, when I looked at it, I certainly wouldn't pigeonhole you as just a musician. You seem to have such a variety of things that you do. Is there any of them which you sort of like tend to gravitate towards, or do you find them all just so interesting that you have to go down all routes at once?
I've definitely had periods of my life when I've been doing a lot of different things at the same time. And then I go through periods where I kind of concentrate on one thing or another. But yeah, I guess the two big things that I feel the most gravitated towards are my songwriting, and my big exciting project right now is that I'm working on my first album, which will be out later this year, hopefully. It's been delayed by COVID, but, you know, so is everything. And performance art in many different ways. I love acting and I love weird stuff. And if I can play the viola and sing or yell or wear weird costumes while I'm performing, that just fills me with great joy.
Which feels very open mic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's quite an interesting combination. I mean, playing the viola and also singing at the same time, and also, as you say, you know, making I don't want to use weird sounds, different sounds.
Oh yeah, weird sounds are great.
Screaming and also the acting part of it. I mean, that's quite a complicated set of things all to do in one go. You know, I guess so. So is it very? Do you find it very? I mean, it doesn't come over as being planned. I mean, is that it seems like there's a lot of, you know, sort of ad hoc or sort of like
Improv.
Yeah, improv. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, improv is a big part of my life and has been ever since I was in undergrad, when I got to experience it for the first time through some amazing teachers. Norm Adams, we were just talking about earlier, Jacob and I both know. And I bring that to my songwriting as well. I think that there's a sense of freedom that I get when I'm able to be on stage and can allow myself to take my songs in different directions, different forms. Even there's a large part of the album that is improvisation, and that it's woven in with all of the things that have been pre-composed and pre-written. Most of my shows that I do also include large sections of large sections of improvisation. So yeah, it's kind of a way of life for me, I think. It's kind of how I live in my personal life as well. I just kind of go, well, all right, what's the next thing? Okay, I'll do that.
I mean, it's funny, the number of like improvers I know, and I don't know if it's a positive or but I know many. We all tend to kind of have that ethos in life of taking the improv world into on non-musical things, and you just try it out, you test, you see what feels good, sounds good, and move through. Do you recognize like a point when you started doing that and you could like pinpoint it? Was it like at Acadia? Was it afterwards?
There were definitely different points throughout my life that I think took me in different directions. Definitely Acadia was one of them. I started playing viola. I started doing new music. And then when I was in London, I was able to really work with a lot of, when I moved to London and started at Guildhall in 2016, I was able to meet a lot of amazing composers and collaborators, start working with them. And I think a big turning point for me was actually my grad recital from Guildhall. I was supposed to be playing a contemporary Canadian piece that a friend was writing me that didn't get finished. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks before my grad recital, I was a piece short. And I found this piece by a Canadian composer called Bellatrix. And that piece had all this screaming and singing in it. And I had really been struggling to find my path in the previous months beforehand. I was feeling a bit hemmed in. Even though Guildhall is an amazing forward-thinking conservatoire, I was trying to figure out what my path was going to be and whether I wanted to keep focusing on classical music or really start creating myself full-time. And getting up on the stage and screaming and stomping around and singing while playing and getting amazing feedback from all the classical music judges made me realize, okay, I can express myself in this way and people are going to find it authentic and real and fascinating. And from that point on, I pretty much just did all new music. I started writing a lot more. I started working with sound art a lot more, and kind of I think that moment of cathartic release definitely took my musical journey in a different direction for sure.
Is this around, I'm going to guess maybe that's around the same time you started going to open mics and started experiencing that world of, that version and world of performance?
Yeah, absolutely. It was also around the time that I hosted this amazing open mic at Guildhall called Eine kleine queer music. And it was this similar sense of trying to find myself, find and explore my queerness, because I had recently just kind of in the past year had fully come out to myself. I'd been questioning my sexuality for a long time, but hadn't really found the space to accept it in myself, if that makes sense. And so Eine kleine queer music was an amazing turning point where I felt like I could merge the worlds of my playing, my performance, hosting, acting, and also creating a space within a traditional kind of classical world for other people to explore their art and sexuality in what felt like a very authentic way. So that was, that all happened within the same couple months. And I think that those took me into a different space with my art making.
I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, a lot of people that we've talked to on the show, and also from personal experience and friends, there seems to be quite a common theme that these things sort of coincide. You do something in a professional life, and at the same time, your personal life comes into focus, and it all sort of gels in one particular event or a particular time or a particular thing you do. And that sort of is the changeover between one period of life and another period. And I think that kind of seems to happen to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I would definitely say that was the case for me.
Yeah. With improv, the thing that's always struck me with improv, and I'm not a very improv type of person at all, is you're on stage and you're improvising stuff and that. Do you ever get to the stage and you suddenly go, oh no, I've no idea what to do now? Or do you ever, does that never happen? I'm just kind of curious, because that's kind of the person who plans everything's worst nightmare, is being on stage and you're suddenly there and you go, I don't know where to go next. And I just get your take on that.
I have the opposite, actually. I've always been a very good performer. I think I have whatever it is, a very natural inclination to just get on stage and do the thing. before I get on the stage, I worry. I think about, how am I going to fill the time? What if I don't remember the lyrics? And something happens when I'm in that performance space that allows me the freedom of exploring, making mistakes, trying new things, and somehow it all seems to work out most of the time. I've had moments where I've started songs in the wrong key and I have no idea where I'm going with it, and I just kind of do what I can and it works out. And for me, that is I think I love that fear. There's that fear, or I don't know if it's fear, but it's that moment of committing to something and choosing to explore it. I love that feeling. Whereas the feelings of fear that I experienced in the practice room while doing music that involved very intense technical, virtuosic practice, that was a fear based in anxiety and fear based in a worry of not being good enough. So yeah, I'll take the improv over Paganini any day.
Yeah.
And I mean, good on the people who love that. I find it an incredibly admirable trait. But classical music in the traditional canon sense, and I think have always had a little bit of a mismatched relationship, partially, I think, because I had diagnosed ADHD, which made it very difficult for me to spend the long hours in a practice room. But on stage, I just feel myself.
I get a feeling Paganini would probably have agreed with you and thought that improv was probably better than following somebody else's thing. Because I suspect, when you look at a lot of the classical composers, they improvised all the time, and a lot of what we do now just sort of eliminates that sort of in the spur of the moment stuff. So I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Well, we should listen to one of your pieces now that we've talked about kind of how you approach creation and improv and your own works. We hadn't picked an order necessarily, but I think for me, one of the ones that I found really compelling was Real Fake Birds, and listening to that one first might be a great intro into your practice. And so let's listen to Real Fake Birds.
Birds. Auto bird setting. Birds. Adjust the dials. And the auto birds will come in at different lengths. Once they enter, they will stay. Birds. Auto bird setting. Adjust the dials. Sunlight. Scattered on the ground. Leaves. Golden leaves. Shattered. And the sun goes down early now. Leaves. Golden leaves. Golden leaves. And the sun goes down early now.
retrograde. The sun. 7 birds have flown away.
They will stay.
The fog rolls in,
Enter. They
and
will stay.
the sun goes down early now.
Once they enter, they will stay.
Leaves scattered on the ground. Sunlight shattered all around. Goes down. Goes down.
Adjust the dials.
Fog rolls scattered on the sunbirds and the sun goes down early now. Fog rolls
Shattered. And the auto birds will come in.
goes down
I'm here today with HENDRA, also known as Sarah McCabe. She co-developed this performance with the AI, and she's here to answer a few questions about its creation.
The algorithm mimics a flock of birds, the way they fly, the way they all are going in the same direction. So the idea is that you put in a sound. The sounds that you put in will be then interpreted by the birds and spit back out at you at random times and irregular intervals. So it's like working with a looper that has a mind of its own.
How does it change the process for you?
When you collaborate and improvise with other people, there are unspoken ways of communicating with them as you perform. The way you look at somebody, the way that you lead into a phrase, whereas the AI was not able to interpret any body language.
Some people think in words and concepts. What do you think an AI would think in?
I think there's so much scope for the imagination there. I just keep thinking about the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And all the amazing sights and sounds that humans could not imagine because of the world that we live in. So I think they could dream and think in untold mysteries.
What don't we know about brains?
I still don't really understand what's going on up there,
What's going on up
how
there?
my brain works, but I'm learning to love it.
I think maybe the human brain and artificial intelligence
Are more alike than we like to think.
AI is learning from us. Do you think there's any potential dangers in humanity being the teacher of AI?
Humans are unreliable narrators. The stories that we tell are all our own version of what happened. Unreliable. So as we try to teach AI how to create their own truths, we're teaching them something that's fundamentally flawed and something that's not perfect, fundamentally flawed. So to see how they take that in and learn and grow with it will be really interesting.
How will AI change our thinking and understanding?
I think as AI grows and learns, we will grow and learn with it. There have been already so many advances in the worlds of chess and Go that AI has pushed the players and will continue to push humans to grow and create, because one thing I know about humans is that we are competitive. And I think that the more AI grows and creates, the more humans will continually try to out-create it.
Do you think AI can love?
I love you.
So, having listened to it, can you tell us about how you wrote, performed. How did Real Fake Birds come about?
So Real Fake Birds is a collaboration with my amazing director, filmographer, Jaspree, and my partner, Liam Elliott. So it's a duet with a program, a looper, a sentient looper that is based on the algorithms of how flocks of birds fly. So you play with this looper, you feed music, sound, whatever you want into it, and it chooses what it's going to loop back at you and when it's going to loop back at you. So it's a bit like playing with this unreliable mind, a duet partner that does whatever it wants. And so we created this this piece that is also a short film looking at agency and how you can create in ways that you don't have total control in, which I think really sits at the heart of most of what I do. And we've also taken that idea and used it in a concert we premiered this concert in Halifax in January with Scotia Festival of Music and Open Waters Festival, using the footage and the music from Real Fake Birds to look at our brains as unreliable narrators. And this is kind of an evolving concept, and some of the sounds and the background noises from Real Fake Birds will be making its way into my album. And the album and the concert as it evolves is really looking at this concept of working with, fighting against, loving our brains and the things that they do that we can't control. Like I mentioned before, I was diagnosed with ADHD, I guess just over a year and a half ago, as well as dyspraxia, which is a motor function balance, memory, neurodiversity. And it's been an interesting journey for me to reconcile these diagnoses with what I've experienced in my life and how to move forward, how to learn how to interact with my brain now that I understand it better, as well as learning how to love it and learning how to love myself in this new light. And as I've been exploring that, I've had quite a few family members experience traumatic brain injuries. So it's been a interesting, difficult, beautiful journey to think about all of these brain-related things. And I've been writing songs and music about this over the past couple years, and this will all be incorporated into my new album, which I'm really excited about.
Mm-hmm.
I love this idea of using algorithms to generate some of this. I kind of really like this idea, and it's kind of a bit like this sort of class of generative music, I guess, is very similar to that. And I find that fascinating how, because it brings up so many questions about machines and intelligence and all of that and ourselves, and it's and I find that whole questioning of that sort of balance really, really interesting and exciting.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying exploring it. It's been fun as well as a healing process as well. It's been great. There's been a lot of joy in it, and I'm really excited for this album to come out and to be able to perform the concert and the album for people and hear their reactions. So far, everything has been really positive, and I've had a lot of people say they've been really moved by the way the music tells the stories that I'm trying to tell, and I couldn't be happier with that. So
Did I read somewhere that you kind of had Philip K. Dick's book, "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," in your minds when you were doing this? I seem to remember. It's because we're going to get on science fiction here, Jacob. You can sleep for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, when playing with an algorithm that has a mind of its own, it brought up a lot of really interesting thoughts about how this music can develop in the future. Part of this interview at the end of the Real Fake Birds movie is talking about how the potential, not dangers, but how will computers and how will the AIs develop, and whether humans need to be worried about them out creating us. And my thought is that humans are very competitive, and that we don't know what the technology dreams, whether they dream of electric sheep, whether they dream in binary code, but whatever computers come up with, humans will always try to out-create them or compete against them. So I'm excited about the future of technology and continuing to create with it, because I think it could push us to really interesting, greater heights.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, this balance between whether you see the future of these machines as being very dystopian and causing us all lots of problems, or being these fantastic things which enable, wonderful creations and enabling us to live lives that are much better to the ones we live now. So it's kind of this balance, I guess, which you're kind of exploring here is where are we going with this future?
Oh yeah, my flatmates and I have had several very intense dinner table conversations about whether we think it's a utopic or a dystopic future. So,
yeah, when I was making some notes of this, I started writing down, we can talk about the Turing test, Descartes, and all kinds of things. And there's a really great lot of dinner talk that could go on talking about this. But it's a really I think quite exciting piece of music, using this type of AI in your music to actually, work against or work with. I think that's kind of exciting, because you're getting something back that you're not quite sure how it's going to work back. I think that's really, really fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, I really love doing it. And there's definitely some of that in my album as well. There's improvisation from me, and then there's improvisation from me plus the birds, as I call them affectionately. So yeah, it's a kind of a nice feeling to know that my album and all the things that I do are mine, but they're also not entirely mine. They belong to something else as well. So it's really interesting.
Well, we should listen to another one. We should listen to, I'm kind of picking at random, but Magnolia's Pantomic seems to me like a good one. But
yeah,
if you have suggestions on another
or
one.
adulthood, yeah. I mean, adulthood's the kind of, either's good.
Well, let's do adulthood. Let's do adulthood next.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay.
I love this broken little house. Let me count the ways. I'm friendly with the kitchen mouse that comes out late at night, because I haven't slept for days. The doors are swollen in their frames, splintered chairs with rusty springs. Everything is fixable with duct tape and a drill. I swear that I'll never tomatoes ripen on the vine. My father's in hospital, so I'm on a sacred mission to repaint our faded kitchen. The color of the wintry sky back home. Suddenly, all our families are dying. I guess at this is we fixed this broken little house. The fence blows down in a hurricane. Laughing round the table by the glow of candlelight. We've been living in darkness for days. Suddenly, all our families are dying. I guess that this is adulthood. Suddenly, all our families are
Same question, kind of. Tell us about adulthood. Tell us about how this one comes about.
Well, adulthood really grows on this idea that I was talking about before, about really thinking about brains and then thinking about family and also just thinking about life and how I guess adulthood is probably one of my most personal songs in that it came from this sense of trying to live and create a life and move forward and at the same time deal with all of the things happening. So it's a very cheerful song at the same time as being quite grim. I don't know. I mean, the music in itself is cheerful. The lyrics can be a bit grim, but it was a way for me to reconcile this idea of being in a space that is constantly fluctuating and still trying to find some measure of growth from it.
When I listened to this, I mean, I kind of found it sad. I mean, I think it reminded me of, not in musically, but in terms of the sort of feeling of like sad country music. I kind of, the music could be quite uplifting, but the lyrics are so sort of sad. And I got this feeling of like, as you say, growing up in where terrible things are happening in parallel to this. And this sort of tension of not wanting to grow up, but you have to grow up. Is that and being pulled in kind of two directions?
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly how I was feeling. And it was also written as a love letter to my current flat and my family. I say family in the queer sense because I live with a kind of rotating cast of queer creators in this very broken house in London, as well as being a love letter to my family, because at the same time as I was living there, I was, experiencing quite a lot of emotional moments with family health problems, and seeing the people that I love in my flat experience very similar traumatic moments with their families. So during this time, it felt like we really relied on each other to create and hold on to each other, as well as make a home. And that's, a lot of the metaphors used in the song are drawn from real life, just trying to grow a garden while absorbing terrible news, painting a kitchen to distract yourself, holding on to the things that are good while working through the things that are bad.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like I don't know, is it a metaphor for a lot of how a lot of us feel? I like the house idea. That's kind of really nice. I mean, you're trying to create a future, yet you've got the, I don't know. I remember when I was young growing up, you lived in bad house after bad house. You were trying to paint them and make them livable in, and as the water's pouring in. Meanwhile, your parent, somebody's dying, or somebody finds out they got a terminal disease, or there's something else terrible, a war in the world. And you're trying to create while the world is destroying around you. And I guess that's kind of a really, this house is your protective shell, I guess.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And it feels weird and sometimes selfish to say, okay, no, I'm going to take the day and, paint my kitchen after I've heard this, terrible thing that's happened. But for me, I find it's a way to work through, because you're allowing yourself space, time, and you're allowing yourself to create, or, I allow myself to use that as a space to create something good.
Mm-hmm. And using creation as a means of processing is it's a gift that artists have the ability to do. And everyone processes in different ways, but I count myself so lucky that I have a method of processing intense things that are happening at any given time that also has a wonderful output sometimes, and sometimes it's painting a room, sometimes it's writing a song, sometimes it's performing. But every time I think I encounter an artist who's doing that or using their skills and talent and tools, or anytime I am able to do it, I think one of the things I think is for somebody who doesn't have a love of art, or doesn't have a practice, or doesn't have a method of working through that, or doesn't have a kitchen to paint, or doesn't have a whatever, how do you work through that? How do you process? How do you, and maybe the answer is they don't. maybe that's the short answer, or maybe it's just an entirely different way of processing that I'm not aware of.
I think that's what, I as you know, I always say I'm not artistically or musically minded, particularly, I'm a scientist by training and this kind of thing. And I think you work through it in a different way. You still work through it, but you do a task that's something, that fits your thing. So, I know somebody who goes off and does maths puzzles, and sits there solving maths puzzles all the time. And that's the way they distract themselves. They don't write music, or they don't write something else. They go and do that. And I think everybody has their distraction. I think the problem comes when you don't have that distraction is the problem. If you're so focused on something that you don't have this thing to go and do, I think that for me is where I think the problems occur. Wow, that's pretty deep, isn't it? I think
we're going deep today.
Yeah, maybe we pivot to like fun costumes and open mics. Maybe maybe that's
Sure.
a good.
Yeah. We need something to get us in a more relaxed, enjoyable mood. What have we got? What have we got on the menu for that?
We could definitely talk a bit more about the wacky side of the performance art stuff that I do,
Yes.
and we could definitely listen to the excerpt from five folk
Yes.
songs from an alternate dimension.
That will definitely get us wacky. That will definitely get us
Yeah.
on wacky, I think.
Well, let's do that. Let's listen to that one.
Hi there! Thank you for downloading and installing the beta version of 5 Folk Songs from an Alternate Reality on your WNKZ 4000. Unlike our other products and services, 5 Folk Songs from an Alternate Reality is live transmitted from, well, you guessed it, an alternate reality. In this step-by-step music learning program, you will learn about a few of the many folkloric traditions, songs, and tales from a very special and beautiful place selected by our founder, Desmond Kodar. Please remember to fully attach the back of your device directly into your central nervous system and make sure that the prongs are fully secured in your headbrain. Remember, incorrect preparation can cause your device and your body to become infected with viruses, and Kodar Technology takes no responsibility for mental anguish, injury, loss of body parts, or death. Please bear with me while I load your lesson. Have a great practice! Please position your instrument correctly and prepare to receive the 4th folk song.
Being so close to a large body of water, the village had a strong fishing industry. According to the marine inhabitants from the large body of water, it is actually a human industry. As the fishermen drop their lines, the fish will try and pull them down into the depths. After all, they too are just trying to feed their families. There is great confusion as to who is predator and who is prey, and, as it stands, the number of fish caught by humans, as opposed to the number of humans caught by fish, is exactly equal. Our good friend, a musician of the High Court from a certain historical period, arranged the then popular traditional fishing song, Fish 2, 3, 4, that would have been heard on all the fishing boats before the inhabitants decided that fishing was far too dangerous, and the profession gradually fell out of public favour.
So entirely different feel, entirely different mood, and maybe when I listen to this, it's so umbrella term like character and wonderful and fun. And so maybe we can start there. Tell us about this.
Yeah, well, this is a piece by my dear friend and constant collaborator, Cameron Dodds. And this is one of my favorite pieces to play in any situation. I love taking this piece, and my own pieces as well, into kind of more traditional classical environments. It's, to give a little bit of background, even though I think the narration explains quite a lot, the idea of this suite of pieces is that they are folk songs being beamed directly into your brain stem, as the narrator says, from an alternate dimension. And, every time I play it, I create some beautiful, wiry, flashy helmet that I get to wear like a crown. And I have a rubber fish to stamp on and scream at. If you can hear the squeaking, I think in the excerpt, that's me stomping on a rubber fish. There was a really great moment when I was performing in Berlin, and I realized that I had forgotten the rubber fish behind, so I had to go on a quest to pet stores across Berlin to eventually found a rubber shark. So that worked well. But yeah, I've this piece is so much fun. I've done an opera with Cam as well, where I played a worm, and I got to wear this incredible bulbous worm outfit. We did it in the Eden Project in Cornwall, so we were traipsing amidst the gardens in worm outfits, and I made 5 children cry. They just took one look at me in my outfit and just started. Big worm, yeah. 5 children cry. A couple dogs went absolutely, they went off and had to be dragged away by their owners. But I had a great time. I do this kind of stuff whenever I can. Any chance somebody says, "Hey, do you want to dress up in a weird costume and just gallivant around?" I take it without a second thought.
And how much workshopping do you get to do? So, longtime collaborators, those are really special relationships where you get to know each other and you get to create for a specific person and interpret from a specific person. It's such a nice thing to be able to get to do. And how much of this gets talked about, workshopped? Is it presented to you as like a final thing? Do you get to chat?
When I work with Cam, it's never really a final thing. That's one of the things I really like about our relationship, is that my improv and take on things are always really important to him. And so with other people, I think it depends on the project. Sometimes I've filled in as, the second artist doing a role before, and that is, less free, but I still always try to take a moment to bring my own personality to whatever it is I'm doing. But yeah, workshopping with other collaborators is just kind of the most fun part of it, I think, for me. Even doing things virtually over the pandemic, I was able to collaborate with a few other arts collectives to do some kind of multimedia pieces. That was a lot of just sending stuff back and forth, talking about what sounded good, what we wanted to change, what things were missing. Working with Jaspree is the exact same. We are always, from day one, listening to each other's thoughts and opinions about different aesthetics. She's going to be doing all of my videos for the album, and it's really exciting because we just have these long chats where, she'll send me a voice message saying, "I think we should have you riding a giant pill bottle in this song," to which I say, "This is great, let's do it." So yeah, I think that most of my collaborations these days, I take because I have a voice in.
I can imagine. I have this vision in 100 years' time. Somebody's going to find a transcript of this piece, and it's all going to be there. And they're going to look at the direction, and it's going to say, "Okay, dress up as Worm." And then it's going to have this music, and then halfway through, I could see the percussion panicking because he doesn't have a squeaky toy. You can just sort of see this coming out in the future. I'd just love to be there. Where's my squeaky toy? It would be great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Royal Albert Hall. There you go.
Yeah,
London
that would
Symphony.
be great. That would be
That'd
great.
be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be cool if I could do a version of my live show with a full orchestral backdrop and have the mechanical bull dressed up as a pill bottle on stage with me? That would be the best.
I think it would work brilliantly. I think we should propose it to the people who do the last night of the proms. The proms are shows. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Hopefully. One day.
They'd be idiots not to be takers. Yeah,
I know. So yeah, this is. I mean, I found this a lot of fun. I mean, this is just great fun, and I can understand how this must be fantastic to actually do. I mean, in a way, I kind of feel this is more fun to do than watching it. It's kind of like one of those things you want to get up and participate. I think, which I kind of guess is nice if you've got open mic type things. Do people actually get up and participate with you ever? Do you ever do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, most of the things I do aren't necessarily crowd participation based. Well, when it comes to open mics, obviously that's a bit of a different story, because an open mic is really a conversation between, as I've kind of looked. Sorry, I have to transition. Sorry, taking a moment for my brain here. Yeah, so the audience performer relationship in an open mic is very different, because most of the audience members, or a significant portion anyways, are also performers. So it's this really interesting space that in many ways bypasses a lot of the boundaries and hierarchies of the traditional artist on stage versus the audience members. So that's a really fun space to be working in and to be kind of immersed in. And I love hosting open mics. That's my biggest joy, is creating a space for people to experiment, especially queer spaces where people can really kind of dig into not just art, but art that looks at their own personal journeys, stories, the joys, and the messy stuff. So that is a really fun aspect of it. And it's also an aspect of it that is complex when it comes to ethics, because there is a history of participatory art being used by the powers that be to bandage social problems rather than looking at the source of problems. When I started my research into open mics, I was full of, maybe a little bit naively, just kind of, open mics are great. They're great for everybody. They're great for the institutions. They're great for the performers. They're great for the audience. Open mics are great. And then I realized, I planned to be hosting open mics in large arts institutions, but started digging into things about, the open mics and the DIY scene really rely on a lot of unpaid labor. And, I had to take a serious look at who the research was for, if the, running open mics in large arts institutions would be really benefiting the people performing, or whether it would be a way for arts institutions to say, look at us, we're so diverse, we're so awesome, without doing any real structural change. So that's the kind of space I've been really kind of immersed in for the past year or so, especially since the pandemic and the loss of so much of our funding in the art scene. There's a lot of ethical ramifications about not paying artists. So, it's an amazing world. The DIY space is where I live and breathe and love. But I can also recognize that there are problems with it that need to be really seriously looked at.
What do you think that kind of critical look feels like and looks like in such a and this is me not I think I have an understanding of open mics, but not being a researcher in open mics, obviously. Do you think it's possible to revamp, given how often ad hoc they are, or often how completely participatory they are? That like everybody has a pretty valid opinion about how they run. What does that look like?
Well, I think for me, it looks like experimentation. I'm going to be running some queer open mics over the next year, and I'm going to be looking at how different ones. Well, I've already done a lot of field work at going to open mics, going to some queer open mics during the pandemic online that were incredible spaces. So looking at those and also experimenting with the formats of open mics and the ways that they can possibly run. And hopefully after that, I'll be able to come up with a format that might be, that feels good for me to be running in a large arts institution, because that was always the plan, to be kind of running these spaces, queer spaces in large arts institutions. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. And I don't know if it's going to happen. In the end, if I decide that I am not the right person to be running them, or that if I can't find a way that I would feel good, even if the participants want to do it, even if the art institutions want to do it, if I don't feel good about it, then the end of my doctorate might be, I didn't do it. I didn't find a way to do it, and that's okay. I was supposed to be running an open mic at the Barbican Center last summer, and just before that happened, Barbican Stories came out. And Barbican Stories is a 200-page book written by employees at the Barbican, people of color who have faced systematic racism within the Barbican Center. And after that came out, I realized that it wasn't the right time, and I wasn't the right person to be running a queer open mic, because I couldn't promise that the space would be a safe and ethical one. So, it's a complicated space that I'm in right now, but I still love open mics. I love them, and I love playing at them. I love hosting them, and people love them too. Other people that I talk to, when I tell them that's kind of what I'm doing right now, get so excited about the idea.
I mean, there seems to me that there is a kind of a societal issue here, which you're going to always run up against, which is in a society which we have, which has basically got a fair amount of racism, a fair amount of homophobia, a fair amount of transphobia, a fair amount of, and we can list off a whole load of these. Actually trying to do anything is kind of difficult. If you try and eliminate all of them, I mean, and I guess you're running up against this kind of barrier of trying to negotiate your way into a space which is free from all of these things.
Yeah. I think for me, the difference with the research versus just putting on something because I want to do it is that because I'm a researcher, and because I'm also I have a studentship, I have a power imbalance. That this is or I feel like there's currently a power imbalance that I need to sort out, and I can't solve everything in my research. And if I was just kind of running an open mic at a local pub and not trying to turn it into something else. I think, it would be a bit different with how I feel about it. But right now, I think my main concern is that I am not using other people for my own gain. Especially in a space like a queer open mic, where people share everything from joy to trauma. Mm. And, I've been lucky to be in beautiful spaces that have allowed me to share those same things. And that's the kind of space that I want to create for other people. And it just needs to be in a way that I'm not using them.
I think this is something we've kind of touched on before in our programs about queer community, I guess, which I guess we all feel is a little bit different to non-queer community space, in the sense that we have this more, I feel, open sort of ability to communicate and feel, how other people are affected by what we do. And I kind of guess this is part of it as well, feeling comfortable with making a space which everybody can feel comfortable in and be themselves for whatever reason, et cetera, et cetera. And this is kind of, I don't know, maybe something that's a burden as well as a positive thing that we do. And it kind of makes it difficult as well as exciting and fun and safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor to create space for people, and that honor should be taken seriously.
And I think it's an honor and an excitement to create spaces that are complex and that are fraught with intense conversations. And it isn't simple, and it isn't cut and paste or easy. It's much more interesting to me to hear from people who work in these really complex spaces, and it's much more interesting for me. I think that's one of the joys of being queer is getting to be in these really difficult, joyous, traumatic, intense, deeply sad, deeply happy spaces that coexist in so many layers at all at the same time. And it does take a lot of unpacking, and it takes a lot of piecing apart what is right and who's the right person for it. And as you say, why me in this space? Maybe not me in this space. And it's part of the fun of doing that. But it's so nice to hear about your research, and so nice to hear about how you bring your own creative practice into that research side. It's always fascinating as someone who works in research creation to talk about those crossovers. And maybe I see this as a summation to our conversation as we hit our time kind of thing. That it's nice to hear from you, and it's so lovely to hear your music, and it's so lovely to hear your thoughts about performance and how you create, but also how you make space for other people to create, and you build these spaces for queer open mics to exist, and the conversation around that. So thank you very, very much for telling us and telling our listeners about everything that you do.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me the space to tell you about what I do.
It's been fantastic, and I think there's a lot more to talk about. So maybe when your albums come out and a bit later on, we might get you back and chat more.
I'd love that. Yeah. It'll be hopefully out in, I think, the winter. Originally it was supposed to be out this summer, but then we all caught COVID during recording. So, that's what it's like right now. And you do what you can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'll make it. It'll get out. It'll be there.
It'll be there. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, we're certainly happy to update people when it does.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. That's awesome.
Thanks again, Sarah.
So nice to get to know both of you. This has been really delightful.
So that's all for this episode. You've been listening to the Classical Queer Podcast, and Jake and I look forward to being with you next month. The incidental music is courtesy of Jared Miller, and the show was produced by Samantha Jane.